First, we'll check out the outlines of Module 2. What are the topics we'll be studying? We'll be revising in Module 2, and then we'll move on to the further slides. As I told, the module is being divided into three parts. One is fill area primitives, 2D geometric transformation, and 2D weaving. In fill area primitives, these are the topics we will cover, and in 2D geometric transformation, these are some of the topics which basically comes under transformation of your geometric object, that is nothing but two-dimensional. With respect to two-dimensional transformations, we'll study different operations here, how they actually perform with respect to geometric transformations. Then finally we'll move on to 2D weaving, which in which we have 2D weaving pipeline as well as OpenGL 2D weaving functions, which are very important with respect to your exam as well. Then, moving on to your module 2, in the first, we'll start studying the first part of the module 2. That is fill area primitives. Initially, we'll start up the module with fill area primitives. So, what is a fill area primitive? As I told, as the name represents, fill area. If you consider an object, suppose I have considered one object which is displayed onto the display window. So, there, if you want the object to be filled with some pattern or any color inside it, the interior part of that particular object should be filled with something. So with the help of this primitives, that is nothing but fill area primitives, you will perform those operations. This is actually an option to you, so that the representation of your object or the project which you are displaying onto the screen, it will look good. With the help of the presentation, that is nothing but you can include a number of patterns here, then colors and so on there. Then important component of a picture is an area that is filled with some solid color or pattern. Your object will be visible, that is nothing but it will look good only you have some characteristics in that, right? Those characteristics are nothing but color. That color might be a solid color or a pattern which needs to be included in that particular object. So what is a fill area? A picture component of this type is typically referred to as fill area. That is nothing but an object which consists of color in its interior part as well as a pattern. Such kind of object where that picture has some components such as color as well as pattern is called as fill area there. Why, where this fill area are used? Why we use fill areas? Fill areas are used to describe surfaces of solid objects, but they're also useful in variety of other applications. In some of the applications, if there is no characteristics such as color as well as patterns in it, it is the efficiency of that particular application is not much, right? So in that cases, we'll be using fill areas. Then also fill regions are usually planar surfaces, mainly polygon. That is nothing but this point basically defines the surface area of the object with respect to fill area primitives. Then, how this fill area are specified? These fill areas are basically specified as polygons. There is some assumptions in the fill area where fill areas are to be displayed with a specified solid color. If you are using fill area primitives or only the fill area, it basically tells you that you are using some solid color to that particular object where you have to display it onto the screen. So you need to remember these key points in the fill area, how they are specified and what is the assumption. First, the fill area is specified as a polygon. In the second point, the assumption is nothing but it is displayed with the help of some solid color. Then we'll start up how this fill area is being represented. Approximating a curved surface with polygon facets is sometimes referred to as surface tessellation or fitting the surface with a polygon mesh. That is nothing but I can tell this as type of fill areas. That is nothing but if I just display this as an example, I can just consider this as a cylinder, right, which consists of a fill area of what? These are nothing but stripes, right, which are being represented as an fill area inside this particular cylinder. Figure shows the side and top surfaces of a metal cylinder where it consists of a polished polygon mesh there. I can call this is one kind of mesh. I can call this is the pure mesh, right? If this is an object you want to display, what is the type of fill area here? It is nothing but mesh here. Mesh kind of fill area you have filled, where the color of the mesh is red. In this, the color is black and white. I can say black, just black, but as usually we specify it as black and white, I can specify the color of this particular fill area as black and white, where the fill area, type of fill area used here is, I can tell mesh here, or you can just tell stripe, which stripes which are being filled inside the particular object. That are the some of the examples of fill areas. Then we'll move on to the next topic, where you can see polygon fill areas. Before moving on to polygon fill areas, we'll check out what is a polygon. Polygon is nothing but a plane figure which is specified by a set of 3 or more coordinate positions called as vertices. If there are more than 3, or the minimum vertices, a polygon should have 3, and the maximum it might increase with respect to the object which you want to display. I can tell triangle is a polygon, right? Such examples comes under polygon there, which are connected in sequence by straight line segments called the edges or sides of the polygon. For I can tell the polygon is correct only when it is being connected with each other. Each straight lines which are being represented should be connected with each other, uh, so that I can represent it as a loop. In polygon, each and every polygon should consist of a loop. If there is breakage of loop, I cannot represent it as a polygon. I can just represent it as an what connection of lines, but there is no polygon represented in that particular object. So polygon is nothing but a plane figure which consists of set of 3 or more coordinate positions which are actually called as vertices. Then it should be connected in a sequence where the straight line segments are being there, which are called as edges or sides. So this is the definition of polygon. Then some of the examples of polygon: triangles, rectangles, octagons, and decagons, where you can see there is a loop right between each and every edges of the particular object. Suppose a triangle, I can see a loop here. If I consider a hexagon, I can find a loop. If there is a breakage of loop here, I cannot consider it as a polygon. So these are some of the examples of polygon. Then, as we saw, what are fill areas? Now we'll see how these fill areas are implemented in polygon. Sometimes any plane figure with a closed polyline boundary is alluded to as a polygon. As I said, there should not be a breakage in the loop of the polygon. Any plane figure which has a closed polygon, closed polyline. This, what does this tell? The whole object should have consisting of a loop there, a boundary there, and one with no crossing edges is referred to as a standard polygon or a simple polygon. So these are some of the definitions there. Then these are the fill areas which we consider in the polygons. First is the regular polygons, which consist of 3 sides, 4 sides, 5 sides, so on. Then irregular polygons, which consist of different shapes. Then concave, convex, complex polygons. And these are some of the examples of uh, polygons, I can say, which are not a polygon. Examples of not a polygon here. So this chart basically tells the types of polygons: regular, irregular, and 3 different polygons, and not a polygon as well. Previous slide was the simple polygon and the examples. That is something I can tell this as an types of polygons representation chart. That are, the first type is regular, irregular, concave, convex, and complex, and then examples for not a polygon. Then let's see, as I told, how the polygon fill areas are represented. In polygon fill areas, basically it consists of 3 classification. The first classification is convex polygon, the second is concave, and the third is degenerate polygon. So let's see one by one what these classifications represent. Then in the first classification, it is nothing but convex polygon. So what is a convex polygon? An interior angle of a polygon is an angle inside the polygon boundary that is formed by two adjacent edges. What does this point tells is it consists of some angle inside the boundary. You just remember the point, the interior angle which is being represented in the object inside the boundary is formed with two adjacent edges. If you want to represent some angle with respect to this object, you need two adjacent edges. That is nothing but these two. I can tell these two as adjacent edges. You require these two edges so that you can provide some angle to that particular object. If all interior angles of a polygon are lesser than or equal to 180 degree, the polygon is convex. So you need to remember when to give the angle, how an angle is being given to an object. Then the definition of an convex polygon is all the interior angles of a polygon should be lesser than or equal to 180 degrees. So I can call that type of polygon as a convex polygon. And the polygon that is not convex is called as concave polygon. To be simpler, that is nothing but the condition what met here is the angle, interior angle inside the object should be greater than or equal to 180 degree there. Suppose a polygon that is not convex, that doesn't meet this condition, the convex condition, I can call that as an concave polygon. Then degenerate polygon. What is degenerate polygon? It is used to describe a set of vertices that are collinear or that have repeated coordinate positions. That is nothing but the vertices which are being represented here can be repeated. It is also applied to a vertex list that contains fewer than 3 coordinate positions. If you want to generate a degenerate polygon, you should minimum require 3 vertices. I can call a triangle as an degenerate polygon as well. So in the second example, you can see here edge between V1 as well as V2 has length 0. V1 as well as V2, it is represented as single edge where it is sharing different vertices. I can tell different edges there. I can call this as an example of degenerate polygon. Then next we see what are the problems which we face with respect to concave polygons. So this is one of the 5-marker question, the problem which needs to be solved in concave polygon. So what is that problem? It is nothing but implementation of fill algorithms and other graphics routines are more complicated with respect to concave polygon. That is nothing but if you want to implement some of the algorithms so that you can fill that particular area of the concave polygon. So it is very complicated. So what is the solution for that? It is generally more efficient to split a concave polygon into a set of convex polygons. Suppose if you have a triangle which consists of some degree that is nothing but lesser than or equal to 180 degree, as I can call that as a concave polygon, I should split that particular triangle into n number of convex polygons so that I can process that particular algorithm efficiently. So what is the problem here? You cannot perform fill algorithms efficiently, which are very much complicated with respect to concave polygon. What is the solution? You are just splitting up a concave polygon into n number of convex polygons. So this is a solution for the problem which has been given in the syllabus. Then, how to identify a concave polygon? The first condition is for concave polygon if the interior angle is greater than 180 degree. As the definition says, what is a concave polygon? The interior angle of any polygon which has the value greater than 180 degree is called as concave polygon. The first identification point is that if the angle inside the polygon is greater than 180 degree, I can tell that as a concave polygon. Then the extension of some edges of a concave polygon will intersect with other edges. If suppose you are defining two polygons there, if I take this as one polygon, if I take another polygon with respect to the same object, if there is intersection of edges with respect to some content, then I can call that as a concave polygon. Then some pair of interior points will produce a line segment that intersect the polygon boundary. Suppose this is an example of concave polygon. If I take pair of two interior points, this has one point and this has another point, it will produce some line. If I take this as an example, these 2 points, it produces some one point, right? It produces a line with respect to 2 points, so that there can be intersection of another polygon boundary. That is nothing but I can draw a polygon with respect to these two lines. So this is the third point you have to remember with respect to identifying the concave polygons. Then we have something called as identification algorithm with respect to polygon fill areas. So let's see what is this identification algorithm 1. Identification algorithm 1 basically specifies what? Identifying a concave polygon by calculating cross products of successive pair of edges vectors. What is the first identification algorithm? These algorithms are implemented to identify a concave polygon. So how it happens here? It happens here basically by calculating the cross product of successive pair of edge vectors. We'll check this out in the next slides. We'll just study the theory part. If we set up a vector for each polygon edge, then we can use the cross product of adjacent edges to test the concavity. This basically tells you how to identify the concave polygon. In the next point, all such vector products will be of same sign, that is positive as well as negative for a convex polygon. If you are implementing identification algorithm 1 to identify a concave polygon, the products of that particular vectors will have the same sign, that is nothing but positive or negative, which basically indicates it is a convex polygon. So check out here, as I told, what we have to do, we should basically take the cross products of the edges. If some cross products yield a positive value and some yield a negative value, we have a concave polygon. What is the condition for convex polygon? When we can tell it is a convex polygon with the help of identification algorithm? If the vector products have the same sign, we'll tell it as a convex polygon. If the cross product output value yields a positive value and some yields a negative value, we can tell it as a concave polygon. If there is the same sign in the cross product output, we can tell it as a convex. If there are different sign you get once the cross product is being done, I can tell it as a concave polygon. As I have defined here 6 number of vertices which consist of huge number of edges there. So starting from edge 1 to edge 6, that is nothing but E1 to E6, I'll be taking all the cross products. If the cross product of that particular edges is greater than 0, lesser than 0 and greater than 0, that is nothing but positive and negative values I get, I can tell this example as a concave polygon. If you have only the positive value or only the negative value with respect to this cross product, I can tell that as an convex polygon. So this is the identification algorithm 1. You need to represent this one diagram which consists of vertices as well as edges. Then I should take the cross products of each edge vectors and then check if the output or the yield of that cross product has a same value or different positive as well as negative values. If it consists of the same positive as well as negative values, I can tell it as a concave polygon. If it consists of both positive as well as negative value, I can tell it as a concave polygon. So this is the identification algorithm 1 to calculate if a polygon is convex as well as concave. So let's see what is the second algorithm. The second algorithm is identification algorithm 2, so that we'll find out if a polygon is concave or not. What we have to do in identification algorithm 2 is first we'll look at the polygon vertex position, which is relative to the extension line of any edge. That is nothing but if you represent a polygon which consists of edges, we'll check out the line extensions of that particular edge where the line is moving to the next point. If some vertices are on one side of the extension line and some vertices are on the another side, the polygon is concave. We'll draw an extension line with respect to each edge. If some points are on one side, that is, if I consider it as on left side, and some vertices are on the other side, that is nothing but on your right side, then the polygon I can tell it as an concave polygon. Then, how to split concave polygons with in the next slide, we'll check out some different methods. Yeah, in identification algorithm 2, you need to just remember these 2 points. First, you will check out the polygon vertex positions, that is vertices position points, so that you can draw an extension line of any edge in any edge. Once you draw this extension line, you will check where the vertices lie. If the vertices lie in one part and some of the vertices lie in another part, then you can tell that particular polygon is a concave polygon. So these are the two identification algorithms with respect to find if a polygon is concave or a polygon is convex. Then, how to split concave polygons? As I told, in some cases, you want to split concave polygons with respect to n number of convex polygons. How to split that? Once we have identified a concave polygon, we can split it into a set of convex polygons. We assume that all polygons are in xy plane. If you find if a polygon is a concave polygon, and it lies between x as well as y axis, that is nothing but xy plane, you can split that particular concave polygon into n number of convex polygons, where the angle of convex polygon will be greater than or equal to 180 degree there. Then we have different methods to split concave to convex polygon. So as I told, if you have concave polygon, you can represent that concave polygon into n number of convex polygons. So we'll check out what are the different methods to split concave polygon to convex polygon. The first method is edge vectors and edge cross products. The second is rotational method. The third is splitting a convex polygon into a set of triangles. You need to remember all the three different methods, which are very much important. The first is edge vectors and edge cross products. The second is rotational method. The third is splitting a convex polygon into a huge number of triangles. Let's see each and every method in deep one by one. So I can call this as an splitting method of concave polygon. The first method is edge vector method. What we are doing in edge vector method is, to be simple, first we'll form edge vectors. That is nothing but first we'll consider each and every edges in that particular polygon. Given two consecutive vertex positions, I will represent Vk as well as Vk plus 1 as two vertices, that is nothing but two vertex positions in the object. We define the edge vector between them. As I told, as the name suggests, it is nothing but an edge vector. I can represent it as Ek, that is nothing but edge vector. I can take this edge vector as the subtraction of the next edge vertex to the previous edge vertex, that is Vk plus 1 minus Vk. Then I will calculate the cross product of that particular edge vector, so that I will get a polygon perimeter there. Once I get the edge vector, then I will calculate the cross product. When the cross product is calculated, then I will take an component called z there, which consists of some cross products where we get some positive as well as negative values. Hence, when we get these values as positive, while the other cross products have a negative z values, then the polygon is concave. So when we can apply this kind of method, we can apply this vector method by processing edge vectors in counterclockwise direction, that is nothing but anti-clockwise direction, so that the cross product has a negative component, as well as I can tell that particular polygon is a concave polygon, which is being represented in this form. As first here, as I have represented some edges in this particular figure, edge vectors for this polygon can be expressed as I told, Vk is equals to Vk plus 1 minus Vk. Let's check out what are the edges which are being connected to edge 1. After calculating Ek, that is nothing but edge vectors, I can represent edge 1 as 100, which is nothing but Vk plus 1 minus Vk after calculating each and every vertices of each edge there. Similarly, I will calculate each and every vertices of another edges as well, till as I have given E6 here, till 6 edges, you will calculate each and every vertices of that particular edge with respect to xy plane. So that was the first method of calculating how a polygon is represented with respect to some vertices as well as edges. Then once we got the edges with respect to vertices, we'll take the cross product of each and every edges there, so that I can represent it as in this formula ej into ek, that is nothing but e1 into e2, e2 into e3, and so on till edge 6. Once I calculate the cross products, we'll check out which edges, which cross product yields the negative component. We'll split that polygon along the line of with respect to another edge. Basically, here, once you calculate the cross product, if the cross product output consists of negative value, then we'll split that polygon. You can just remember, after calculating the cross products, if you have negative value in the output of the cross product, you are just splitting that polygon. So that was the first method, that is nothing but edge vector method, where you calculated the edge vectors, then cross products of it, and checked if the values of cross product is negative, you will just split up the polygon. What happens in the rotational method? As we saw in the first method, we are just calculating the cross product of each edges. And in rotational method, what happens is, basically, as we want to perform splitting of huge number of polygons so that we'll get an concave polygon, the second method is rotational method, where we shift the position of the polygon so that each vertex in turn has some origin. Suppose this is an object I take, I'll be splitting each polygon with respect to each origin. I'll split this as n number of vertices which consist of origin. This is the one origin, this is another origin. With respect to these origins, I will be splitting the polygon there. Once there is a splitting up of polygon with respect to origin, we rotate the polygon about the origin in clockwise direction, so that the next vertex is on its particular axis. We just perform rotation operation with respect to that particular object which you have defined. Just you are rotating that particular object so that you will get the next vertex. The initial vertex is Vk, the next vertex will be Vk plus 1 on x-axis. In the following vertex, Vk plus 2 is below the x-axis, then the polygon is concave. Once you keep on rotating this particular object, as you got the vertex Vk plus 1, similarly, if you again rotate it, you will get the second vertex of that particular object as Vk plus 2, which comes below the x-axis. Once you get the vertex below the x-axis, so I can tell that particular polygon is a concave polygon at that moment. After you get the concave polygon, we'll split the polygon along the x-axis to form two new polygons, and we repeat this particular task of concave test for each two new polygons there. I can consider this as one polygon, I can consider this as another polygon. As we have splitted up the polygon into the vertices with respect to origins, I can define two number of polygons in the plane which I have defined here. So this is how rotational method works with respect to polygon fill areas. Then the next method is splitting a convex polygon into set of triangles. How the splitting of concave polygons is done here? Once we have a vertex list of convex polygons, we could transform it into n number of triangles. Once we have the vertex, once we have calculated the vertices, that is nothing but vk plus 1, vk plus 2, so on. If you have this list for a convex polygon, you can actually transform that particular vertexes into set of triangles. How this happens? First, we'll define a sequence of consecutive vertices to be a new polygon. I will define some vertices which is considered as a triangle, that is nothing but another polygon. In the middle triangle vertex is then deleted from the original vertex list. We'll check out what are the vertices with respect to that triangle is there. We'll check out the middle term with respect to the triangle, and then we'll delete that particular vertex list with respect to that particular polygon there. Then this procedure is being applied till you strip off another triangle, till you get another triangle. We continue forming triangles in this manner until original polygon is reduced to some n number of vertices. At last, we'll check out the triangle which consists of huge number of vertices as a set and define that particular polygon as an convex polygon where it consists of huge number of triangles in it. So these were the three different algorithms which we studied. For what we are using these three algorithms? Why we use these three algorithms? We use these three algorithms to split concave to convex polygon. There might be a question. It might be asked for 12 or 14 marks, or it might be maximum 12 marks to explain different methods to split convex to convex, concave to convex polygon. It might be asked this also explain the different ways to split a concave polygon to convex polygon. At that moment, you people should answer these three methods. Or individually, this might be asked for 5 to 6 markers. So that is what we studied, the three different methods to split a concave polygon to convex polygon. Next, we have how to identify the interior as well as exterior region of a polygon. Suppose you have a triangle, as you know how to define it interior. You are able to see the interior part as well as exterior part, but the system doesn't know. You need to perform some algorithms there, right? So if you want to perform those algorithms, the system should understand what you are doing there. You are just checking the interior part or the exterior part of that particular object. So the most two common algorithms used to specify and identify the region is interior or exterior are odd even rule as well as the non-zero winding number rule. These are the two algorithms which are used to identify the region of an object is interior or exterior. So let's see how these two algorithms work. In the first algorithm, that is nothing but the odd even rule algorithm. How to identify a particular object's interior as well as exterior part is first I'll be defining some of the points with respect to odd even rule. I can call odd even rule as an what I can say odd parity or even odd rule as well. I can call this algorithm as odd parity rule or even odd rule, which is the vice versa of this algorithm. What happens in this algorithm, that is odd even rule, is we'll first draw a line from any position P to a distant point outside the coordinate extents of the closed polyline. First, if you consider a position P with respect to some point, I will draw one line with respect to that particular position, which consists of some distant from the outside coordinates. Then we'll count the number of line segments crossing along this line. Suppose I will take this AB as a position, and this is the line which I have drawn here. Then I will check out what are the number of line segments crossing that particular line. I can call this as one line which is crossing this one line. I can call F and G as another line. I can call F and E as another line which is crossing A and B. Then once you get the count with number of lines which are crossing that particular position which you have drawn, once you get the count, we'll check if the number of the segments crossed by the line is odd, then the P is considered to be an interior part. Otherwise, if that particular part is called as an exterior part. As we got the number of count of lines, if I take A and B as a position, that is nothing but a line with respect to which you will be selecting other lines. If I count one, two, one, two, yeah, or three, almost three. If I can check if that particular count is odd, then this particular position, that is nothing but the number of lines which have been crossing that particular line, I can call it as an interior part. And if it is even, I can call it as an exterior part. You need to just remember the key points here. You are just drawing a line and just checking how many number of lines are crossing that particular line. If the number count, the number, that is nothing but the count of lines which are crossing that particular line which you have drawn, if it is odd, I can tell it as an void. I can call it as an interior part of the object, and the number of lines which are crossing the line which you have drawn, if it is even, I can call it as an exterior part of that particular object. So this is how the odd even rule is being performed. In this next step, we'll check out the non-zero winding number rule. So how this non-zero winding number rule works is, first, in non-zero winding number rule, it basically counts the number of times that the boundary of an object bends around a particular point in the clockwise or anti-clockwise direction, which is nothing but winding number. Once you have an object with respect to some point, it will be in non-zero winding number rule, it will be winding with respect to some axis where it will be moving with respect to anti-clockwise direction. Once it is being rotating, I will get a winding number, which is actually a default assumption done with respect to the software part. We'll get an winding number. Once you get the winding number, you will initialize the winding number to 0, and then I will imagine a line drawn from some position P to some particular axis beyond that extent of that particular object. Once you get the winding number, you'll assign that winding number to 0. Similar to that of odd even rule, you will start drawing a line there with respect to some axis, so that you'll get coordinates of that particular object. Then the line we choose must not pass through any endpoints coordinate. Suppose in the previous part we performed the two edges. We considered A and B as line which needs to be checked with respect to the number of lines which are crossing it. But in this, we should check out if that particular line does not meet any endpoints here. If it meets some endpoints, you won't be getting the updated winding number. So once we draw a line with respect to that particular object, we'll add 1 to winding number every time, where we can see intersection of the points are done. Suppose, as I told, the initialization of winding number is 0. Once you draw the line and check, there are some intersection between the line drawn as well as the another parts of the object. If there is some intersection, I will add 1 to the winding number. After adding 1 to the winding number, if the winding number is non-zero, then P is considered as an interior part. Otherwise, the P is considered as an exterior part. You need to just remember the values of winding number. Once there are intersection of points with respect to the line you have drawn, if the winding number is non-zero, if you have some values for winding number, then I can consider the positions P as an interior part. Else, if the winding number remains 0, I can tell that particular position as an exterior part of that particular object. So this is how you find interior as well as exterior part with the help of two algorithms. One is odd even rule and the other one is non-zero winding number rule. So uh, in the next topics, we'll check out how to represent a polygon table, how plane equations are represented. With respect to that, we'll be defining some equations, and then how to calculate front and back faces of a polygon with respect to three-dimension x, y, as well as z. Then we'll check out some OpenGL polygon fill areas function. So I will stop